Good evening, everyone. My name is Rishi.
And my name is Kabir, and we're going to be talking about joy today. So Rishi, I know we talked a little bit earlier in the week about our topic, which was joy, and you're doing some readings. You're looking at some sort of some of the literature, I guess psychology literature, and sort of overall looking at the different views, philosophical views, whether that's from the Western perspective or the Eastern perspective. So I wanted you to start off by just talking about what you found, particularly with the Western perspective. What is joy? I mean, how do they describe it? How do they conceptualize it?
Yeah. And I guess that's a really good question, Kabir, because I guess in my everyday work, I spend a lot of time working with senior leadership of organizations, helping them design their culture change and behavioral change journeys. And in that, we don't really talk about joy a lot. So to actually talk about joy in this webinar, I had to go up and do some research. And we had to look at what is it that literature actually talks about joy. So I guess one of the things that I found quite interesting is that the science and the published literature didn't have a consistent definition on what joy was. And they were trying to look at happiness as a relative concept. The dictionary talked about extreme happiness as one of the ways of describing joy. So there wasn't a consistent definition of what joy was. And not only that, but there was very little research done on what actually joy was. So that's one thing I found really interesting. So I guess looking at the Western perspective of joy then very much comes from our language. Some of the psychologists suggest that joy is an adaptive function, right? Something that helps us stay motivated to help achieve goals in life. And I guess it's a way to help us improve our mood, to come into a positive frame of mind. But where science struggled was to really differentiate joy from happiness.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think it's telling that we have a culture that really ignores joy almost, and we have this obsession with happiness. There's 1,001 self-help books about how you can achieve maximum happiness. I think in the American Constitution it's somewhere written, the pursuit of happiness is some sort of right, that we all have. And I think maybe, there's obviously a conceptual problem, but also the idea of joy, I think, is largely married up with contentment. And if we start to tell people, you should be content, what does that do to our society, which is a consumer society, which is saying, you deserve to be happy, so therefore here's X thing and Y thing and this product and that product that's going to make you happy. And so I think it's interesting and maybe a sign that our culture is a little bit immature, that we're not willing to talk about joy enough, even though I think unconsciously that's what we're all seeking. Even when all of us say we want to be happy, what we're actually saying is we want to be content, we want to be joyful with what we have. But as long as we keep pursuing the next thing and the next thing, you get one thing and you're happy momentarily, and then you're sort of unhappy. And there's this beautiful talk, which we're going to play for our audience later on, where Shri Mataji talks about the two sides, the opposites of happiness and unhappiness. And I guess someone like Jung might call it the shadow, but the fact that these are dualities, and therefore they're not necessarily a wise thing to pursue, just happiness, because then tomorrow you'll be really unhappy. But the other thing is, how much of happiness is just our ego fulfillment, Like, I want to be the boss of this company, or I want to have a Ferrari. And yes, you're happy, but are you satisfying what's truly you, or is it just your ego that's being satisfied?
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting topic, right? Because we all know that our ego is generated by our thoughts. It is when we start to believe that we are our thoughts and our thinking gets in the way. And that sort of coincides with some of the scientific expectations of joy. So a couple of the research papers that I came across, they actually looked at joy as a combination of feeling as well as thinking. And it's interesting to see that the Western society that we live in really looks at joy as a part of our thought process and sort of doesn't focus as much on what's happening inside our heart, but really focus more on what's happening in our brain when it tries to conceptualize the emotion of joy.
Well, I think that the Western mindset is very much about the thoughts. I think, therefore I am, this Descartesian idea. So I think, as you said, they really struggle with this idea of us having anything that's unconnected to our thoughts, because they're so attached to our thoughts being our primary identity. But if you look at traditional cultures and indigenous cultures, they talk about intelligence of the heart. Or, even in the Western language, we have, gut feelings, or that someone's spoken from their heart. We have this, there is an understanding that there's something that's not just sort of mental projections and tied to thoughts. There's something about the human experience and the emotional dimensions, the spiritual dimensions that are beyond thought. But I think, especially the Western scientific model, really struggles with anything that doesn't involve thought, and thinking.
Yeah. So Kabir, I believe we have a short video to play.
Yes, so the video, as I mentioned earlier, is a public speech given by Shri Mataji, the founder of Sahaja Yoga. And it's in Sydney, and I think I'm correct, it's about 1986. So we'll play that now, and then we'll continue on with our discussion.
All right, brilliant. So let's listen to a short talk of Shri Mataji talking about joy.
Spirit is the freedom, is the free being within us. It is detached. It cannot be killed. It cannot be blown away. It cannot be burnt away. It is eternal, Anand. It is eternal. That spirit is joy. That spirit is the source of joy. That emits joy. Joy is different from happiness and unhappiness. Ego, when it feels pampered, it feels happy. I like it, I like it. This I business is ego pampering. That is not joy, because you like to drink today and tomorrow you don't like to have a headache. It has the double side of I like and I don't like. You like something through your ego, dislike through your super ego. So it is a one coin, and they have two faces, one is happiness, another is unhappiness. Joy is beyond that. Joy is a drama. Seer is a witness. You see a drama, the double side of I like and I don't like. You just watch it as a drama. You like something and you are seeing it and enjoying it through your mind, dislike something, you are weeping, but you know you are not that. So it is seer, a witness. Your spirit is the witness. And when you become the spirit, you become the witness. You become the witness. For example, you are seeing something through a window. There's something exists in the window, for example. Now you enter inside the room and you see through the window. Your conditioning is like one wave arising in you as a thought which comes from the past. It rises again, another thought comes up and goes in the past. First the past thought is there and then another future thought is there, it disappears. You see the thought rising, but you can't see the disappearing of the thought. In between that is the present. That's the place is established, that present is established when your attention becomes enlightened by the Spirit. Either you think of the future or of the past. But I say now, at this moment, at the present, You cannot stand there because your spirit is not enlightened. Because spirit is the present. When you get your realization, you find that you are not thinking of the future or the past, you are just enjoying. Everything becomes different. The whole life becomes a drama, and the joy out of it starts coming out. And you really enjoy small things here and there. And you really understand how much joy was lost before realization. This is not your mental thing that gives you joy, but the joy pours on you from your head just like this, a cool thing starts pouring down. As some people have a feeling of the tension rising up, it's the same way a cool sort of thing, flow of joy you feel in your whole body pours out. Sometimes this cool breeze that rises in the head also starts becoming like a fountain pouring down that joy. You look at the pictures, for example, see this star of Moses. You see David's star, you see that. When you see that, you can think about it. Or else you just watch this. Watch it and don't think. The joy of the creation of that thing, whole thing, becomes one with you. Like all the creation around, a lake is completely felt in the lake if the lake has no ripples. Completely. In the same way, all that is joy. The Creator, whosoever it may be, has put there. You get the complete joy within yourself because there is no thought. There is no barrier, no condition. The whole thing becomes one with you and you start feeling extremely happy, extremely joyous. A feeling which is indescribable. It is to be just enjoyed, to be felt. Like Kabira was asked, why don't you speak now? So he says in Hindi language, he's one of the terrific poets we had. He says, "Jab mast hue, fir kya bolte?" When I have gone into the nectar of the intoxication, of the spirit, now what can I talk? There's no word. No cup can fill this joy. No words can fill this meaning. You better be with me and get it and enjoy yourself. That's all he could say. That's what I say, the narrow vision has closed your eyes to so many things. Even Christ you cannot understand. About Christ is written in Devi Mahatmya, about Mahavishnu. All his life is written. If you can read it, you can find out that before coming on this earth, you will see how he was created, what powers he was given, how he is the Son, and all that is written. But for us, only we think that Bible is the authority. It is. But even to understand that Bible, as I told you to understand Gita, you better get realization. In the same way, to understand that Bible also, you have to get your realization. The one about whom it is described had never been to a school. None of them have been to any school. For the first time in this life, I have learned this English language. I never knew this language in any one of my lives before. Because I knew I'll have to talk to you and I'll have to tell you about spirit in this language. But to understand it, we have to read ancient scriptures. Beautiful ancient scriptures are there. It describes the nature of the spirit. He said that spirit has got three qualities. Sat Chit Anand. Sat Chit Anand. Sat means truth. Chit means attention. Anand means joy. Sat is the truth. What is the truth now? If you see something white, it is the truth. Alright. But what is the truth of this shore? A realized soul can know. Not you. Because his spirit is enlightened. He sees the fifth dimension of the shore. Let him hold it in his hands and he will know that this is Mother Shah. Immediately he'll feel those cool vibrations coming out of it. He'll know that this is Mother Shah. That is the truth. The four dimensions which we know of is not the truth, but the fifth one, which is the truth, which is the spirit. Sitting down here, you can find out about anybody. What is he suffering from? What are his problems? What are his chakras? Is absolute. This knowledge is absolute. If you have 5 or 10 children who are realized, and if you tie their eyes, and ask them about a patient which is suffering from, they will all raise their fingers, this, or this, or this, or all of them, whatever may be the case. All of them will raise the same fingers. It is absolute knowledge. It cannot be argued. It cannot be refuted. It is what it is. And also, today the man may be having these problems, tomorrow he may not have at all. So then, whatever was there is finished, whatever is today, that's what they are going to tell you. So it is the truth. The rest is all, is mithya, is false.
So Kabir, there were some very profound words spoken by Shri Mataji, and I guess that sort of aligns to a lot of the Eastern philosophies we come across when we explore what the East believes joy to be. So what's some of your experiences around things you have found from the Eastern philosophy perspective while exploring joy?
Well, obviously, the Eastern philosophy is not at all afraid of saying that we have to go beyond, our thoughts. That's the first thing. The other thing is that the Eastern philosophy, joy is really tied to this idea of you becoming your true self, which is your spirit, or the spark of the divine that we all have within us. And all the rest of these things that we have are accumulations. So the Eastern, at least the Vedic idea anyway, and this idea that Shamaji is talking about, is that we can't actually experience joy until we get rid of all these other things we've accumulated, like our ego, fundamentally our ego, and these false ideas, these conditionings, as Shamaji calls them. When we remove those and we're the spirit, we're actually in one with the almighty power, and then we feel the joy of creation. And the purpose of the meditation is to be in the present moment. And when you're in the present moment and we have this silencing of our thoughts, that's when we have this process of rejuvenation. We have this process where we're fundamentally in the present moment, and then we're experiencing joy. So we're seeing things, whatever we see, we don't have mental reactions rebounding from them. So the problem with our mental reactions is that it gets in the way. It's a veil of, gets in between us and joy. Because if we see something and we want to acquire it, or if we see something and we don't like it, or we have some sort of other reaction to it, it's like you're sending a thought out and a thought's rebounding back at you. And it's like having what should be a clear pond, having rocks thrown in it, and there's constant ripples that can never sort of be still anymore. So thoughts don't allow us to be still. And
I think that's really, really interesting, because if we explore the philosophies that Buddha talked a lot about, there was a lot of talk, and Buddha really talked about selfless joy, right? This is where the belief was that you can really derive joy by having somebody else experience joy. So this is where the experience of joy for yourself was really selfless, and really it wasn't about any personal gain. And I guess a lot of the literature from the time of Buddha really looked at joy as an antidote to envy. All right, so we don't get stuck in the mental projections of the mundane, and we really look to go beyond the mundane and experience joy, right? So we move away from the concepts of materialism, from the want that seems to consume us in this day and age, and really looks at creating a sustainable state of joy that we can stay in for a longer period of time. So I guess in the research that I've done, that seems to be the underlying premise of Buddhism and really what Buddha talked about. How do you see some of that being implemented in today's time?
Well, that's the question. How do we break away from those mental habits? Because here's the conundrum. If we know that all these thoughts are arising and giving us trouble, how do we escape those thoughts, right? So what Sahaja Yoga is saying, what Shri Mataji is saying, is we have to go beyond these thoughts. Other philosophies, for example, mindfulness, which is very popular at the moment, is training you to sort of be attentive and aware of your thoughts. But what Shri Mataji would say is that that's good. It's good to be attentive to your thoughts. But the next step then is to try to go beyond them. Because if we get entangled in any process that still engages our thoughts, and I think this was a quote from Shri Mataji, then it's like making the criminal the policeman. But then when you arrive at that, you say, okay, I want to try to, have this mental silence. For some people, they say, well, that's impossible. What are we without our thoughts, number one? And secondly, it's what are the practices we can use to actually arrive at that kind of a state? And interestingly, most of us actually intuitively do things that help us, to reduce our sort of mental clutter and reduce all this excessive mental activity. Like, what are the things we like? We like walking out in nature. Why is nature so pleasant? Because when you look at it, you simply enjoy what's there. You don't want to acquire it. There isn't a reaction of thoughts to come back to you. You just enjoy it for what it is. Or extreme athletes, they get in this, or professional athletes, they get in this state called the flow state. And it's a process where they're completely in the present moment and they make all the right moves. And it's not a mental process. In fact, if you're a sportsman, if you think too much about something, you end up not performing because your body and your mind aren't well aligned. But if it all happens organically, spontaneously, and in this kind of a flow state, then it works out. So we're always intuitively, if you like, seeking joy in different activities. But what Sahaja Yoga allows us to do is to implement some practices that help us get more and more into that state of the present and into that state of mental silence. And then the byproduct of that is joy. Even without having to explicitly pursue it, you become more joyful.
So Kabir, we were talking earlier, and you mentioned that you had written a thesis on the difference between mindfulness and mental stillness as part of your Master's of Philosophy. So can you tell us some of the key differences that you found when you were researching the very popular mindfulness practices and mental stillness that's achieved through Sahaja Yoga meditation?
Yeah, sure. Well, so mindfulness talks about paying attention to your thoughts and doing so in a non-judgmental way, okay? So the meditations will involve things like progressive relaxation and so on. And you're bringing your attention, could be to your breath or to various parts of your body and relaxing them and so on. And the idea there is, and you could do it in any way. There's mindful walking, there's mindful eating. And essentially, it's coming down to paying attention to your thought process and trying not to react to that thought process and trying not to be judgmental. So don't be too harsh on yourself. I mean, that's essentially what mindfulness is talking about. And Sahaja Yoga is talking about getting to a state where you have complete mental silence. So you'll notice that when you have a thought, generally it's a thought that can be categorized as a future thought or a past thought. But there's a space between thoughts. Thoughts come in waves, and interestingly, if you're really stressed or angry, you have a higher concentration of thoughts, and if you're really relaxed, you have a lower concentration. It's like the wavelength is more flattened out. And Sahaja Yoga is really about practices that help you find that little space between thoughts, expand that space, and then have a state of complete thoughtless awareness. And people are, we've tested this out in studies, people are not only able to achieve that state, but we're finding that there's the effect of that state is more than just a placebo. Okay, it's more than just the relaxation response. So you and I, just sitting here are pretty relaxed, and when you're relaxed, your heart rate's going to reduce, your blood vessels will dilate, and so on. And so there's going to be an effect just from being relaxed. And so the question in the literature has always been, is meditation anything more than that? Is it more than the relaxation response? And what we find, Sahaja Yoga doesn't have a huge organization for funding for research. It's really essentially the research that has been done into Sahaja Yoga meditation has been done by amateurs like myself and people who have been practicing the meditation are interested in it. But some of the studies that we've done, and there have been a few very good random control trials, have shown that there's something unique about this experience of thoughtless awareness. And the effect is something that's can't be attributed just to the relaxation response. So it's an interesting field, and if you're a practitioner, you and I know the benefits and have felt the benefits. But there is that sort of philosophical difference. I guess mindfulness is still, in some way, engaged in the thoughts, even if it's just witnessing them. And Sahaja Yoga is saying that's really good to do that. It's a good practice, but one step perhaps further along is maybe to go beyond the thought process.
Yeah. So I guess, Kabir, on that note, how about we do a quick meditation exercise and see if we can actually achieve this state of thoughtless awareness?
Sure, let's do it.
So for this part of the webinar, let's see if we can all relax, find some time to sort of look inside and see if we can experience this state of thoughtless awareness. So I guess to do that, let's see if we can find ourselves a comfortable place to sit down, a quiet environment, take our shoes off. If you've got glasses, if you want to take those off or loosen your belts, just to relax and be comfortable. And if you feel like sitting on the ground, you can definitely do that. But if you feel more comfortable on a chair, feel free to use a chair or a couch like I'm doing now. So I guess what we'll do is we'll start with putting both our hands on our lap, and we'll open our hands on our lap, right? And we'll place our right hand on the different energy centers on the left-hand side of our body. And as we do that, we will say certain affirmations quietly to ourselves. And the reason why we want to do that is because we really want to raise that energy of meditation inside us, which is within the sacrum bone, right at the bottom of the spine. And as part of this set of affirmations, if you really have the desire to feel this state of meditation, you will feel that the energy will rise through you, and it will take you into this state that we've been talking about of mental stillness and mental silence, and will help you feel that joy inside. So in the beginning, what we'll do, we'll start off with our left hand on our lap, and we'll put our right hand on our heart. And we'll say an affirmation with our hand on our heart. Next, we'll move our hand to the left side of our stomach. And this is the second place, and we'll say our second affirmation there. Then we'll move our hand to where our left hip meets our leg. We'll say an affirmation here before bringing our hand back to the left side of the stomach. back to the left side of our heart. Then we'll move our hand to where our left shoulder meets our neck, and we'll just twist our neck and move our neck to the other side just to relax it a little bit. Then we'll take our hand and we'll put it on our forehead. And this is a very important step. And what you'll find is that slightly tilting your forehead down really helps open up this energy center and this nerve plexus. And right at the end, we'll stretch our hand so our palm is nice and firm, and we'll place the palm of our hand right on top of our head, on the fontanelle bone area, the soft spot for that little kids have. And we'll apply a bit of pressure, and while applying the pressure, we'll rotate our scalp 7 times in a clockwise direction. So this is the process that we will all go through. So just to prepare yourself, if you can get comfortable and close your eyes. And this is a really important step, because what it does, it helps to bring our attention inside ourselves. So let's just take a few minutes for ourselves, close our eyes, and we'll start with one deep breath. So we'll breathe in. And a shallow breathe out. And we'll take our right hand and put it on the heart. And keeping our attention inside ourselves, we'll ask a question silently within ourselves to the energy of meditation, the Kundalini energy. Am I the pure spirit? Am I the pure spirit? And then we'll take our right hand and place it onto the left side of our stomach. And here the affirmation will say, and the question will ask our energy of meditation is, am I my own master? Am I my own guru? And then we'll take our hand to where our left hip meets our leg. And this is where, if we have the desire within ourselves to feel this state of meditation, the affirmation here is, Mother, please give me the pure knowledge to feel the joy within. And then we'll take our hand back to the left side of our stomach. And here we'll answer our previous question. I am my own master. I am my own guru. And we'll take our hand back to the left side of our heart. And once again, we will answer our previous question, that I am the spirit. I am not this body. I am not this mind. I am not this ego. I am not my conditionings. I am the pure joy. I am the spirit. And then we'll take our hand to our left shoulder and where it meets our neck. And we'll just move our head a little bit to the right side. And the affirmation here is, I am not guilty. Because guilt really impacts our ability to feel the joy in our hearts. So here, without thinking about specific situations, with all our attention, we'll say, I am not guilty. And then we'll take our right hand to our forehead and we'll just squeeze our forehead a little bit, just gently, so you can feel the pressure. Bend your head down a little bit. And the energy center in our forehead really controls our thoughts. And when we don't forgive, our thoughts really start getting the better of us and prevents us from achieving this state of mental silence. So it's really important to say the next affirmation with all our hearts. Mother Kundalini, or the energy of meditation, I forgive everyone. And I forgive myself. I forgive everyone. And I forgive myself. And then we'll move our right hand, our palm stretched to the top of our head on our fontanelle bone area. And while applying some pressure, we'll just rotate it in a clockwise direction 7 times. And with each rotation within ourselves, we'll say, Mother Kundalini, which is the loving, caring energy that is rising up from our spine, from our base of the spine, our fontanelle bone area. Mother energy, please give me my self-realization and please help me feel the joy within. And once you've done that, just raise your hand about 2 or 3 inches above your head and see if you can carry your attention from on top of your head where your hand was to where your hand is now, a couple of inches above your head. And as you bring your right hand back on your lap, see if you can keep your attention back on top of the head, just a couple of inches above where your hand was. And if you get any thoughts, just ignore them, and they will rise and they will fall and fade away. Now, keeping your attention on top of your head, see if you can slowly open your eyes while you keep your attention right on top of the head for the remaining of the webinar. So Kabir, we've just gone through a quick meditation. What are some of the other things that you have found about meditation and how it really helps us as people experience that joy on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's a good question. What I've found personally is, if I am not regular with my meditation, I don't enjoy the simple things in life as much, because I seem to get carried away. We all lead busy lives, maybe a little bit less busy since this whole COVID situation. But in some ways, there's a sort of the silver lining is, I think, all of us coming back home has slowed the pace of life a little bit. But especially what I found just working, in a busy life is that you tend to, you're so busy planning the next thing that you lose the enjoyment of day-to-day things, normal things, whether that's being with your family, being with your children, just being present with other people, because you're so preoccupied with thinking about what do I need to do next, what do I have to do at work, and then of course these days we're bombarded all the time with emails from work and other things, so it's all encroaching on our lives. So the practice of meditation really helps recenter me, and I think that's what it does for most of us. That's why we consistently do this practice. And I think what from our discussion, what we're talking about is this idea that we can't really enjoy things unless we're in the present moment. And how do we get in the present moment? We can get there by meditation. That's a really a good way to do it. It's been trialed for thousands of years now. Sages and rishis and philosophers and so on have struck upon this same thing, being in the present and the benefits of meditation. So I think that's where we arrive at, is that if we can be more present, and how do we get more present is trying to do meditation, especially trying to get mental silence. And when we're achieving that, we tend to enjoy everything. We don't need much, but we enjoy what we have, because we're in the present moment.
And I guess what that sounds like, Kabir, is that we don't really meditate for short periods in the morning or in the evening. We really have to try and find a way to keep that state of thoughtless awareness going throughout the day. And that way we are able to experience that state of joy, not just for 5-10 minutes in the morning or 5-10 minutes in the evening, but we've got to find a way to sustain that. So let's see if we can watch a short video of Shri Mataji as she talks us through how to sustain this state of thoughtless awareness throughout your whole day.
Wonderful.
How to do meditation, many people ask. Don't do anything. To just go into thoughtless awareness. Try to go to the thoughtless awareness. If you can get into that condition of thoughtless awareness, you've done your job. Because that's the point where you are with the truth, with the reality, with the joy, with everything that is so fundamental. When you meditate, try not to make some sort of a function out of it. No. Meditation is something silencing yourself, silencing your thoughts, and going to that deep ocean which is within you itself. One should try to meditate and go up to the point of thoughtless awareness. So, what happens to you? If you are in thoughtless awareness, what happens to you is that you get the confidence, complete confidence of divinity. You know You have that. I have seen children coming from our school in Dharamshala, extremely confident and extremely humble. And I asked them, what do you do? They said, Father, we meditate. We meditate in the school, in the evening, and that meditation helps. Imagine these small children can say that. So why not you also understand that meditation will give you security. It will give you a real enlightenment and a complete connection with the divine. Without the connection of the divine, what's the use of doing surgery?
So Kabir, that was a really, really great talk. And I guess for meditation practitioners, the more we meditate and the more we practice meditating, I guess it just gets easier to then sustain that feeling of thoughtless awareness throughout longer parts of the day.
Oh, exactly. I mean, someone once described it to me like catching a wave, so it was a surfing analogy. It was obviously a surfer, but he was saying that, the better you get, the longer you can catch the wave for, so the longer you can sustain it. And I think you were saying this earlier, and about also the fact that with meditation, it's not something that we do. There's not mental effort. It's a sort of surrendering. We can only be in meditation. We can't try to do meditation. And when we get too much into this mindset of, I'm going to do meditation, we're sort of exerting too much pressure, putting too much pressure on ourselves instead of relaxing and surrendering to the experience and trying to just be in meditation.
Yeah. And so I guess the more we practice, the easier it gets for us to stay in that mental silence state. And it is that state and the lack of thoughts in that state that really help us feel that state of joy.
Mm.
But I guess, Kabir, I was wondering, why do you think joy is important to us in our lives? Why is this such a critical part of what humans seek?
Well, I think it's the fundamental part of what we seek. I mean, we're all seeking. The drunkard is seeking oblivion. If you've got some other vice, you're still seeking because you think that thing is going to give you satisfaction. It's going to give you contentment. But transience offers nothing forever. So we're all seeking that. But the end of the road, as you're doing that meditation, the pure desire, the true desire is actually to seek that's within us, what's within us, which is our spirit, which is the spark of God Almighty, which is the eternal source of joy and contentment. And once you taste that nectar, you don't have desire for anything else. It's the one desire that submerges all other desires. So I think regardless of what kind of where we are at in life, all the other little desires that we have are trying to lead up to the big desire, the true desire. And that ties in with joy and contentment. We're all looking for joy and contentment. I mean, they like to say we're all looking for happiness, but I think it's more than that, as we've discussed. It's not just this duality of happiness, sadness. Actually, we're looking for peace, contentment, and joy.
Yeah. And that really resonates with me, Kabir. And I guess that's because doing a lot of the work that I do with senior leadership of organizations around the world, from a 9 to 5 perspective, I do feel like in my experience that I do need to stress down a little bit and sort of relax. And after work, and I really enjoy playing music. So I play Indian drums, the tablas. And what I find is that playing the drums and playing some music also gives me that feeling of stress relief. It helps me get into that state of mental peace. And I actually get a lot of joy out of being with the arts. Either it be going to the theater or looking at beautiful paintings. And I personally love to collect art Because sometimes just watching an artist's creation is so satisfying that it really fills your heart with a lot of joy.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. And what does music do? I mean, it bypasses our thoughts, doesn't it? We simply enjoy it and we don't react to it. And again, I think that's why you've intuitively found that music is that thing that it connects you to joy, you know, and actually brings you more into the present. You know, that's that's beautiful to hear. I'm not much of a musician myself. I like listening to music, and I totally understand where you're coming from. But if I was to pick up an instrument, I can imagine that would be very meditative for me.
Yeah, and in addition to that, on weekends, what I also like to do is to just take a walk out in the nature. I'm lucky enough to be living in Canberra, which is surrounded by beautiful bush, and it doesn't take very long for you to find yourself into a quite a beautiful natural spot where you can just walk, enjoy the trees, and really appreciate the majesty of the mountains and the nature around us. And I guess that's another way I find that I'm able to find some peace within myself, and that also helps create that sense of joy as you look at the beautiful nature around you, and how really magnificent the creation is. And I guess that, in addition to playing some music and the regular meditation, I really find helps me sort of stay calm, stay engaged, and really feel more peaceful throughout the day.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned awe there, because I remember you talking about some of your readings earlier, and how there was some descriptions of awe and how that was tied up with joy. And I think that's really appropriate as well. The feeling of awe, which we often get from nature, especially from feeling so insignificant in the face of nature, that somehow does trigger a sense of awe, because you realize you're one small part of this much larger, macrocosm, if you like. So I think we should finish off trying to sort of do a simple meditation. What we'll do is we'll listen to some music, and we'll sit quietly, and we'll just basically try to keep our attention at the top of our head, and I'll sort of just simply lead it. But all I want our listeners to try to do is listen to a piece of music, and keep their attention on the top of their head. And if they're getting thoughts, to say, not this thought, or I forgive this thought, okay, like that affirmation you were mentioning earlier. And then always returning again our attention to the top of their head. So shall we try that?
Let's do it.
Off? Okay. Let's all sit comfortably. If you're on a chair, I'd suggest taking your shoes off, having your feet approximately shoulder width apart. If your belt is tight, loosen it up. If you've got glasses, you might want to remove them. So we'll start by having a comfortable posture, trying to keep our back straight. Let's take a few deep breaths. Breathe in through your nose, hold the breath, and then out. Now let's close our eyes. Bring our right hand to the top of our head again. Press firmly. And with the palm of our hand, let's just rotate our scalp. Just massaging the scalp a little bit. And pressing quite firmly. Rotate it around 7 times. Now lift your hand above your head Now let's try to let our attention settle in that space between the top of our head and our hand. And once you feel that your attention is settled there, return your palm to your lap and sit down listening to the music. If your attention wanders, you can say, I forgive this thought, or you can say, not this thought, or you can also return your hand to the top of your head. So when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. Okay, I think we'll wrap up. We're almost out of time. So Rishi, any last words?
So thank you for leading us through the meditation, Kabir. I really enjoyed it, and I guess with regular practice, we'll be able to sustain that feeling of mental stillness for longer times during the day. I guess to give you some additional resources, you can go to www.freemeditation.com.au/resources, and you will find lots of material available to you that you can use to help establish your daily meditation routines. In addition to that, we have other webinars that are available at www.freemeditation.com webinars. And you'll be able to find all our existing webinars that have been broadcasted, as well as new ones coming up. Now, we have a special event coming up on the 5th of May, where we have all-day meditation sessions from the morning, and we will be doing a special screening of a movie called Freedom and Liberation at 6 p.m. And on next Thursday, we will be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is music and meditation. So we really hope that we see you all there next Thursday at 7 o'clock. Until then, a good evening from us and enjoy your meditative week.